so glad to have you here. In this video, I will give you a few life lessons one may have gained from the movie Sparkle, the 2012 version. For those who forgot or just didn't see it, here's a quick synopsis. Three young women, Sister, played by Carmen Ejogo, Dolores, usually referred to as D, portrayed by Tika Sumpter, and Sparkle, played by Jordin Sparks, secretly form a singing group against the wishes of their strict mother, Emma, played by Whitney Houston. With the help of their manager, Styx, played by Derek Luke, the group becomes a local phenom with major label interest. Will their music careers come to a screeching halt as their personal lives begin to fall apart? Life lesson number 1. Never let a jerk who enjoys publicly embarrassing others impress you. During a date in the local diner, Levi gives Sister a ring box with a newspaper clipping of a ring inside. He says he one day will buy it for her if she'll have him. She doesn't seem too impressed, but before she can respond, Satin interjects to make Levi the butt of his joke, while openly making a pass at Sister in Levi's face. Levi is clearly embarrassed, and Sister is visibly amused by Satin's antics. After Satin leaves the table, Levi suggests taking her home. As they get up to leave the restaurant, Sister leaves the box and clipping on the table. The next time they see Satin, he makes more jokes at Levi's expense, and Sister performs on stage as if Satin is the only person in the room, for all, including Levi and Satin's date, to see. Satin's date leaves, but Satin does not go after her. Instead, he sits right there enjoying the show, making Sister feel like she's the only person in the room that matters. Later in the movie, Levi shows up with flowers, and Satin shows up with a ring. Of course, Levi is livid. Satin is amused because he has made Levi the butt of his ongoing joke, and Sister thinks it's cute. After they are engaged, Sister brings Satin to Sunday dinner. He disrespects their home and the pastor. He makes Sister's family and black folk like them the butt of his jokes. As Sister and Emma exchanges a hurtful and embarrassing dialogue, Satin interrupts to say he asked Sister to marry him, and she said yes. He then dismisses himself and Sister from the table. Ultimately, through this interaction, Satin helped to widen the wedge that already existed between Sister and her mother. Both Satin and Emma behaved as expected, which led to Emma's ultimatum and Sister choosing Satin. Not long after this scene, Satin introduces Sister to drugs, starts beating her, and making jokes at her expense. Be careful about letting someone who enjoys publicly embarrassing others impress you. Satin can't ever be amongst other people without puffing himself up above the rest. All of his jokes are jabs at someone else. Even when he seems to be backtracking his jokes, he's undercutting somebody. A perfect example of this is when he approaches Sister and Levi at the diner. During his mini comedy set, he says, "This is a good man and this is some good cheap food. I used to eat here when I was struggling." This statement is supposed to express to Levi that he's just joking. But does he have to undercut the diner and everyone who works and or eats there to do so? And if the food is so cheap and he's above it, why is he there? All things considered, it's not surprising that he eventually turns on Sister. Neither is it surprising that she shows up to the meeting that is supposed to change their lives high and beat up. Or that Satin beats Sister the night Levi heckled him during his comedy set. Satin is the kind of man who will not be outdone by anyone, including the woman he says he loves. If that means attempting to take away some of her shine, he will do that. This is what people like Satin do. People like Satin don't feel special unless everyone in the room is less than them. Or they can, at the very least, convince themselves that they are better than everyone else. They can't physically fight everyone, so they use their words to do what they would otherwise do with their fist. No, I'm not saying everyone who goes out of their way to publicly embarrass others is physically abusive, but they will use their words to hurt you because that is the purpose of words to them. You would have to be blind to miss the flirtation that's happening between Satin and Sister. You would also have to be blind to miss the total disregard that Sister has for Levi. By the time Satin showed up with an actual ring for Sister, I'd lost count of how much disrespect had been flung Levi's way. Levi took most of the disrespect in stride. It's not surprising that he was ready to fight when Satin showed up with a ring. After all, in his mind, Sister was his woman. After the fight was broken up and there was no question that Satin and Sister were a thing, Levi turned on Sticks. Since Sticks is his cousin, he expected him to have his back. It's easy to look at this and say, Levi was crazy. The signs were there. But we all have or know someone who has fought over or worked way too hard to be with someone who wasn't committed to them. In Sister, Levi saw a beautiful woman that he wanted to be with. He took her acceptance of his invitations as proof that she was his. But just because someone accepts your invitations or y'all enjoy each other's company doesn't mean they want a real relationship with you. There's a big leap between we have a good time together and let's build a life together. And none of Sister's actions said she wanted anything more than a good time. For example, when he presented her with the ring box and picture, she didn't seem impressed or moved. There were so many times that she encouraged Satin's behavior in Levi's face. And when Levi attacked Satin, she laughed. But like so many people, Levi overlooked all the ways that Sister showed disinterest toward him because he wanted it to work. Now I get it. This movie is set in the 60s when everyone was supposed to want marriage and children. But regardless of the era, it's never a good idea to assume everyone wants the same things out of life. Sister feels like she has spent her life taking care of her siblings and doesn't seem to desire something so tame as being someone's wife or mother. She wants something a little less predictable and a bit more shiny. And Satin seemed to present that. All things considered, it's not surprising that she didn't end up with Levi. It's more shocking that it took a proposal from another man in Levi's presence for him to get the message. What's worse is he walks away blaming Sticks and is so upset over it that he feels a need to heckle Satin at his show weeks or months after the fact. Now, this isn't to suggest Satin didn't deserve it, but it is to acknowledge that Levi came there with the intent of embarrassing Satin and maybe Sister too. Be careful about investing your hopes and dreams in someone who doesn't want or like you like that. Drop down in the comments. If you were in Sticks' position, what would you do? Life lesson number 3. Be careful of teaching your kids it's your way or the highway. When Sister gets up to leave with Satin, Mama says, if you leave my house, there is no coming back. Not this time. Sister leaves anyway. Within a few weeks or months of leaving her mother's house, Sister finds herself in an abusive relationship with a man who wasted no time isolating her from her family and getting her hooked on drugs. The first time she shows up with bruises, Sparkle and Dee try to get her to come home. They tell her that Mama would let her back in the house, but whether it's an unwillingness to face her mother or the lure of satin, she doesn't go home with her sisters. When it's time for their meeting with the record company, Sister is all bruised up and high. Afterward, the sisters come over to save her. Sparkle and Dee run around the house, packing Sister's things, while Sister lounges on the couch claiming she's not going anywhere. Satin comes in and tells them that they need to leave his house. Sparkle tries to reason with him, but he hits her, which causes a big fight that ends in his death. Sister takes the fall. I'm not blaming Emma for all of Sister's troubles. After all, there is a good chance that Sister wouldn't have gone home even if she wasn't told she couldn't return, especially since her mother's house is such a controlling environment. Sister wants and needs to feel free, and she will never get that at Emma's house. There's no room for the real sister in that household. Honestly, there's no room in Emma's house for anything or one that shows up in the world in a way that doesn't appeal to her. Sparkle is the most submissive adult in the house, with a gift for writing. But to Emma, there is no room for any of that. Emma expects her children to be respectful, get an education, and serve God. They can have dreams, men, or anything that she doesn't approve of. And if they can't live up to her expectations, they have to leave. Now, I would never say Emma or any other parent is wrong for having rules for their household. But there are ways to express that certain behaviors or life choices are not pleasing or even sound without making your kids feel like your love and affection is something that they can lose. The problem with creating a strict environment like Emma's is children become convinced that if they don't show up in the world in a way that appeals to you, then there's no room for them in your life. For many kids, they simply hide the parts of themselves that they believe you wouldn't approve of. In the movie, these three young women make it all the way to a TV production and never share that with their mother. For someone who dreams of making it big, this is a huge thing to not be able to share with your parents. And that's just one of the arguably positive things they are hiding. Other kids like Sister go getting themselves into small troubles that grow into big problems, all because they don't know or believe they can come to you. And what's worse, some of them are right. Now I know someone is watching this saying, did you like the movie? On a scale of 1 to 5 stars, where 1 star means I couldn't finish it, and 5 being this production was everything, I give Sparkle 3.5 stars. It's an acceptable remake. They make enough changes to create a different experience, but not enough to make the first forgettable. I enjoyed Jordan Sparks' voice, and the performances were good. But the movie completely wastes Tamela Mann's voice, which is almost as great a crime as wasting Whitney Houston's. I also didn't care for the treatment of Sister. I really would have liked to have seen her depicted as a fully three-dimensional woman who wants more out of life than what society expects or deems acceptable, instead of the cautionary character that she ends up being. Now it's your turn. Don't forget to share, subscribe, hit the bell, and or tell me your thoughts down in the comments. Did you like the movie? Did you learn anything? Or was it just a good time?